All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. What a crazy time. This is an emergency meeting, a special called meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission. Several other of our commissions and public service groups have been called to order in under these circumstances, and we're no different here. I want to take a quick moment to thank city staff for their work in making this happen. I have a few things that I'm obligated to make mention of. Today's meeting is being held via this video conference, and that's pursuant to Governor Lee's executive order number 16. That's in an effort to protect the public welfare and address safety concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic, which obviously we're all living under. So this is a little bit of a public notice to that effect. And in the same breath, it's important to note that special meetings of the commission may be called at any time by the chairman. And so, I've called this meeting with plenty of notice, at least 72 hours, which is pursuant to our bylaws. So I appreciate you all for being here. Some of the requirements have been waived due to, us wanting to be business friendly and making an emergency meeting to, make sure that our business owners here in town can proceed with their plans. So I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate anyone that's watching being part of this public process. This is super important. And, governance of any municipality, any region doesn't stop just because we have maybe the crisis of a generation upon us. So I really appreciate everyone being here. We are posting at this meeting these amendments to our bylaws under Section 8, and I'll just read those really closely. These rules may, within the limits allowed by law, be amended at any time by an affirmative vote of not less than 4 members of the commission, provided that such amendment shall have first been presented to the commission in writing at a regular or a special meeting. This is a special meeting preceding the meeting at which the vote is to be taken. And so all that to say, we will be having another meeting, preferably at the regularly scheduled time here later in May, in which Nathan,
quick point of order.
Please.
So, and this is some poor communication on my part. We do need to have a vote to call an emergency meeting.
Okay.
So we need at least 4 commissioners to agree. And so if you can call for a vote to agree to call to order an emergency meeting, we need that on the minutes. And then as far as kind of a statement about the electronic meeting taking place, you've made that statement. That is sufficient at this time. We do not need to propose or adopt any changes to the bylaws at this time. So if we can get a vote. Vote to call an emergency meeting, and then you've taken care of the statement. So then we can move on from there. But also, while I'm speaking right now, the item 3, approval of the minutes, I didn't send out the minutes from February. So we can table that and do that at our next meeting and adopt February and May 6th, today, minutes at our next meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you very much. All right, well, then let's go ahead and please vote on the emergency meeting. I guess I'll put forth a motion in favor of holding this emergency meeting, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, looks like we have a unanimous aye across the board. So thanks, everybody. Let's move on to our approval of the agenda, item number 2. All in favor of the agenda, say aye. All in favor, say no.
Well, do we want to strike the item 3 on the minutes? And then also strike the discussion of conducting electronic meetings? Item 1 under new business.
All right.
Yes, absolutely. So the motion would be to strike item 1 from new business and then strike item 3 from the agenda entirely. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here under these circumstances. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nathan. If we're just going to move on into new business now, can everyone see the screen, the presentation? Okay.
Yes.
I can't see it, you know.
Well, all right, Liz, you listen intently. But
All I can see is my ugly face.
The first item up is for an addition for a second floor at Southside Elementary. This will go right over the area that's circled in red on your screen, and this is to accommodate some school consolidation that's happening and to add a grade. And so this is a great opportunity for our school district and for those folks in the Southside Elementary School District. The building itself is not historic. It was being built about the time that the National Register District was being created. And so it is referenced, but it is not a historic building. And so it's non-contributing. And so with that in mind, we kind of use a little bit lower standard from what we may typically apply to an addition to a contributing building. But that said, the project, this is a front elevation here showing the area that's in darker tone is where the addition will be placed. This is a little bit closer view with some of the detail of the work that's going to be part of the process, part of the construction, as far as the windows and the brick detailing. This is a side elevation. So if you're kind of standing at kind of near Boyd Street looking back, this is the side view. And then again, a close-up view of the brickwork that will match the existing brickwork, and as well an example of the brick that the architects have been hunting down to try and match the brick that was used in the original construction. And I will let them speak to that if there's any updates with that. So they're going to do their best to match the existing building in terms of the masonry work, as well as the type of masonry and mortar that's being used. And that is pretty much the extent of what our guidelines would call for in this case. And so staff is recommending approval. And I've been notified that this project is probably not going to take place in the very near term. But as we know, a COA that's issued is good for 12 months. And if there's no changes, then it can be extended with staff approval. And so they're going to go ahead and get this knocked out if you agree to it. And they're, if there are any significant changes that take place by the time they get to construction, then they'll come back to us. Otherwise, it would be a staff approved item. So staff is recommending approval, and that's the end of my presentation. I do have a slide here. I just want to, as we go into public hearing, we have the applicant available to speak to this item. If there's anyone in the public that is streaming this, watching this, and they have a comment about this project, they can email me at the email address shown, or they can call into this meeting and and join our little party here using the phone number there and the meeting ID and password. And we'll be doing this and introducing this for each of the items on today's agenda. But this is the first one for Southside Elementary. So Nathan, if you want to open up public hearing, we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. The public hearing is opened at this time. I would love to hear from you if you have any thoughts.
If you want to jump in with your name and address, we can hear from you. And then if Randy, I don't know if you had anything to add, but you're welcome to jump in too.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Tom Shanks with Shaw and Shanks Architects, 205 East Unaka Avenue, Johnson City, Tennessee. And I guess I would start by saying that we were the original architects. Most of you know that on South Side. And we're one of the finest feathers in our cap. We're very proud of the school. It was originally designed to have these 4 classrooms that we are adding installed in some point in the future being now. We were charged by John Campbell at the time to come up with somewhere for future classrooms on that site. And as most of you all, or all of y'all know, it's a very limited site. So the only option seemed to be a second floor over one of the areas that didn't have a second floor. And the most logical one was the one where we are putting this addition. And at the time the building was built, it incorporated the structural components to carry the second floor, and including the actual floor slab. And then the roof was installed over that. So the floor slab and the structure is already there to accommodate this second floor. In terms of the design, it's all pretty much, well, it's not pretty much, it is consistent with the remainder of the building. We've gone to great effort to try to find a brick that matches, as you saw. We're still not 100% on that, but we're refining that to get absolutely as close as we can with the brick. And the mortar will, of course, match. The windows will be the same style, aluminum clad windows with a wood finish inside to give it that natural look on the inside of the building. And that's pretty much it, I guess. I can't think of anything else to say, but I'm certainly here for your comments. I would say that we were originally going to bid this, I believe it was in March, and that got pulled because of the issues going on with the virus. And we were hoping maybe a little later in the summer or fall. Now it looks like it's probably going to be early next year before we bid it. But we are complete. We have fire marshal approval. We have City of Johnson City approval from the building department. The only piece of the puzzle missing is your all's approval. So that's the last link in the puzzle. And as Matt said, we felt like we would just go ahead and get this done. And if we, hopefully it'll be out for bids and the CO or certificate of appropriateness, I'm sorry, ready to obtain before that year's out. But if not, that we don't anticipate any changes or anything like that, and we would just ask for that to be extended. Or if by chance there were changes, we'd of course come back to you and start the process over at a later date. And I would like to say too, I guess just most of you, I know Liz knows this and Hal Hunter knows it, but I served on this committee, the Historic Zoning Committee, in its early phases. And I think I was probably there, as was Liz and maybe Hal also, at the time that we wrote the Tree Street guidelines. I'm sure they've changed a time or two since then, but we were probably the original authors of that. And I served for 10 years on the Historic Zoning Commission, so I understand it and understand what you all are doing and what you're going through. I'd hate to be going through it right now, but anyway, I appreciate what you all are doing and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, do any members of the commission have any comments or questions at this time?
I just have a comment or question. When you add on to another building, sometimes it kind of gets disjointed like hospitals do in big cities, but I think you addressed that it's not going to be that way. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, there's like Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital on the west side of Chicago. Looks like a hodgepodge of different architectural styles and doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. But I think what you addressed is going to be as close as possible to the building.
Right. That's our intent.
Right.
Mr. Shanks, I have a question. And I apologize if this has gotten brought up already, but how many more students are going to be able to be accommodated by this addition?
Randy may be able to answer that a little better, but it's 4 classrooms, approximately 25 students per classroom, so about 100.
Okay.
And that's correct. And what the plan is to move 5th grade back to all the elementary schools. And in order to accommodate the 5th grade at Southside, they needed to add this addition so that grade level could come back.
Thank you.
Has this already been funded? It's not in conjunction with the deal between the county and the city school boards about financing?
No, and actually what's going to happen, there'll be some bond issues that will go out for this under the PEP program. And then the debt service will be paid by the quarter-cent sales tax that comes in for school capital projects under the PEP. And so with everything that's going on right now, that's why we kind of are holding off on the bidding probably until the 1st of next year, till we can see what the sales tax ramifications are going to be in the city with all the closings that's taken place because of the coronavirus. Sales tax reporting is usually 2 months behind as we receive that from the state. It takes about 2 to 3 months to see where you're at. So that's why we're going to wait on this to make sure that we're not impacted so negatively that we can't make the debt service.
Okay.
So bonds will probably be issued next year for this project. With the other, there's 2 other elementary schools that we're going to be adding on to that are not in historic zoning districts, but those all 3 will go together as for 5th graders to move back into, and those will be 3 other capital projects that'll be paid for through PEP funding.
That doesn't include Town Acres, right?
No, it does not. Town Acres is another beast in and of itself with a brand new school that's being proposed there, but that will take some time to get the funding in place for that project.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
Yes, Nathan, this is Hal. Just a question for Tom. The other wing, the other 1-story wing going off the other side, is that also built for a 2nd floor or not?
It is not.
It was not. Okay. I somehow had the impression that both of those wings could support a 2nd floor, but
no, it was just the one wing.
Okay.
Matt, we opened the public hearing earlier. Have you gotten any emails on this? Or okay. Well, does anyone have any other comments or questions?
I just have a quick comment, and primarily, Mr. Shanks, I do want to say I can appreciate the ability that you had to put, essentially continue the same language of the existing school. I think it works really well. I don't really see anything that that anybody would want to change. I did actually share Hal asked my question for me, so I'm not going to repeat the same discussion, but I just wanted to just say that again, I appreciate how you handled the addition on the 2nd floor. I do wish that we could have, there would be an opportunity to extend that other wing, but I guess that's a question for another day.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay. Okay, well, if no one has any other comments or questions, I would be open to a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner McCusker, a motion to second by Commissioner Hunter. Ms. Lawrence, shall we call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Bielska?
Yes.
Commissioner Forsythe?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker?
Yes.
Commissioner Toole?
Yes.
And Chairman Brand?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
I have,
Thank you.
I have one quick question for Tom.
Okay.
You gonna add any lights on the second floor?
No. All skylights. Yeah, we've got a few lights, of course.
Hal's bored. He's looking for work out there, Tom.
Okay,
Come on.
well, we try to pull him in every once in a while, but he seems reluctant.
Isn't that conflict of interest?
Well, actually, you did pull me in on this on the site lighting.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Except for those bollards. I never liked those bollards. That was.
You can't make everyone happy.
Oh, man.
Okay.
I like that Hal waited till after the vote to ask that question.
I like that a lot.
It keeps it legit.
Well, we
right.
appreciate your time and vote on this, and I'm going to check out.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tom.
very much.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Bye, Tom.
Bye.
Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to check out as well, and I appreciate your all's consideration for this, and thank you for your vote.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Randy.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Randy.
Thank you all.
All right. It looks like the next item on the agenda is for Vibes, the lotion salon and the lotion bar.
Yes, thank you. And we have the applicant on the phone here. And so when we get to public hearing, we can hear from her. This is, we actually have two signs on our agenda today that are part of the same building, two separate units on the same building. This is part of the Henry project, which was approved last year, which included 4 buildings. And this is the first one that's being renovated. And as part of that renovation and part of the COA that was originally approved, the metal brackets that are in place for projecting signs, they were previously approved as part of the overall renovation and the COA for the Henry. And so those are in place. And now we have applicants that are tenants in these units that are coming for their specific sign approval. There are existing sign blanks, PVC sign, white PVC sign blanks that are 30 by 15 by 1 inch. And so those came with the brackets, and those have been provided to the tenants. Now the tenants are coming with their design for how they want to apply or utilize that sign blank. And so that's what we're looking at as part of this application. And so for 325 East Main Street, we have Vibes, Nails and Lotion Bar. Those are vinyl letters that will be attached to the sign. The sign will first be painted beige. And so that was a kind of agreement, working with staff and the applicant to try to limit the amount of just white space and further align it with the design guidelines. So a beige color was chosen. And then once it's painted beige, the vinyl lettering will go on it, and then it'll be coated with a clear coat to protect it and help it weather. And so that is for the projecting sign. This application, real quickly, the letters that are shown will be cut out of a larger pattern. And so the applicant just wanted to make it clear that the pattern that's shown in the example may be slightly different depending on how the cutout from these larger designs, which colors will be included, which ones won't be. But this is the overall patterns that the letters will be extracted from. And so we've looked at the projecting sign. There's also lettering to go on the door. Can everybody see my mouse?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
See my mouse? Okay. So this area that's in black is just being shown to add contrast for us to be able to visually see what's being proposed. It won't actually be black. It'll be clear glass with the cutout of the vinyl lettering being placed on the glass door. And so again, the vinyl lettering here and the size and the amount of coverage of the total storefront is well below what our limits are from a colors, the type of font, all of that is in line with our design guidelines. The one issue that I want to bring up is really with the projecting sign, the PVC sign blank, it being a plastic sign. That does not meet our design guidelines. However, I do believe that with our current set of circumstances economically and the need to be business friendly for downtown businesses, allowing someone to use an existing sign that they were given to at least get started and get their doors open would be an appropriate thing to do. The overall scale of the sign is very small, so the impact that this plastic square is going to have is minimal, especially with how nice the metal bracket is. So I see a very limited impact from allowing the use of the PVC. I did encourage the applicant to look into other options. For a while during these conversations and when the application came in, I was confused and under the impression that this was high density urethane, which the Historic Zoning Commission has approved before as a material, kind of a replacement for wood. It turns out it's plastic, not the foam, the dense foam. And that didn't really register with me till very late at night when I was putting the packet together. So, but I still think we need to allow this to move forward, if only for a certain set amount of time, similar to like a temporary banner, but maybe a little bit longer than the short amount of time we allow a banner. But I would say so. Staff recommends approval of this, and with consideration of a condition that there's a time limit put on it, so that a higher quality material that meets the design guidelines can be procured. And I've looked around at some quotes for what the cost of the sign may be. I've also talked with Diana Cantler from JCDA to see if there's potentially some money, grant funds that can be used to assist in the cost of that higher quality signage. So those are all things that we can do to help incentivize that and work with the applicant over the next 6-12 months to come up with something that is a good, solid, permanent sign that's a good example for the rest of the district and fits in with our the character that we're trying to establish and maintain. So staff recommends approval of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions or go into the public hearing.
I have a question on the blanks, Matt.
Yes.
You said you did some research into the cost of that. What would the cost of an HDU blank be for a sign this size?
Probably about $850.
Okay. Matt, what kind of timeline are you thinking in terms of for this sign before a replacement sign would be needed?
I'd be open to hearing from the commissioners on that. I think we're in such a turbulent time economically that it's across the board, I think that cities need to be looking at relaxing some standards, relaxing enforcement for some period of time, with at the end of that period of time being a very dedicated effort, a concerted effort to then reestablish enforcement, recognizing that it's a grace period. And so I see that on across at a very large scale. This is a very micro level of that type of thinking, some way to allow our business community to get back to work and to get things clicking again, and getting out of the way of that process for some certain amount of time, but being very dedicated on the other end of that to make sure that we bring those standards back up. So that's kind of the thought process here, especially with the times we're in now. But I also think, just in general, our downtown has seen momentum, seen some growth, but there's a lot of vacant properties. There's a lot of new investment. We've had new investment that's had trouble finding tenants. I think from a Historic Zoning Commission standpoint, we've got to find that balance between business friendly and the highest possible standards, recognizing who we are as a city, and that we don't want to do something to get in the way of growth and be a burden to retail. That's, it's a difficult time for retail, especially if you're looking at, I really like the size of these shops because they're small. They really allow an appropriately sized business to come downtown. So taking all that into mind, who we are as Johnson City, what's the economic health of our downtown? What role does the Historic Zoning Commission play in being business friendly and maintaining historic character? All those things are at play. So that's a long-winded answer.
An appropriate amount of time, something along those lines.
Yeah,
I was thinking 12 months.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Megan, about a year. That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, I would actually be a little more concerned. PVC is notoriously not sunlight friendly. And I think we should also include a stipulation that if it fades or deteriorates or just doesn't hold up before then, that they're going to have to address it faster.
Fair point.
Yeah. Matt, one thing, was this the buildings that weren't remodeling up to what we approved previously that you mentioned before?
Yeah, the roof line, they took out columns that they were not supposed to take out on the roof line.
Okay, so this is part of it, right?
This is the same. This is a tenant in that building.
Okay.
Have they had, what's been the resolution on that? Have we had any progress?
There's been no resolution other than no actions taken.
Okay.
So Matt, I got a question on this. We have a steel frame up there, so this sign then slides into that in some way. Is that it?
Yes, yeah, exactly. It slides in.
Okay.
Oh, and I will mention on these brackets, they have, it's hard to see. I may have a better picture later, but they have, there's a little pole or post that sticks out here and has an exterior light that shines back on the sign on both sides and shines down. So exterior illumination. The bracket itself and is a to use the perfect pun, it's a shining example of
Boo.
what we want to see.
Amazing.
For the type of sign, the type of projecting sign we want to see. It's like straight out of the design guidelines. So
I have another question, clarification. At first, I actually, reading the proposal, it sounded like they were proposing to paint the bracket, but I'm glad you clarified that for me. It's just the blank. But one of the notes I think it was in the staff notes, said that the bracket would be centered on the brick pier. Does that mean it's actually going to be relocated so it is actually centered on the brick pier?
You know, that is incorrect. I believe, let me check something here. I may have looked at a photo incorrectly and thought those were centered. They're actually shifted towards the door. They're on the door side of each unit. Okay. So there are columns that separate the units, and the sign brackets have been placed, shifted over towards the door.
Okay. So there's no intention to move them. They are where they are.
That's correct. Yeah, that was a mistake on my part.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Good question.
Do we have any other questions or comments or thoughts before we open the public hearing?
I would just comment on the paint, and I don't know if we should wait for the public hearing or not, but I think that just in a technical sense, I think we want to make sure that the paint that we use is actually compatible with the PVC. So I think we had just Rust-Oleum listed, and that's typically meant for metal, which is why I thought that it was going on the sign bracket and not the blank. Yeah. So if we're painting the blank, then I think whatever, regardless of the color, then I think that the application, what that coating is, needs to be compatible with PVC. Again,
yeah, that's a good point.
It's notorious.
We can let the applicant speak to that. She did the research on the paint, but I do think Rust-Oleum makes a product that's for PVC, right. And they can use that color in that material or paint material. But we can let the applicant answer that.
Okay. Yeah. I'll hold the rest of that for the applicant.
Well, if no one has any other questions or comments, generally, I'll open the public comment at this time. Is it Jennifer, Ms. Parker?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you guys for holding an emergency meeting or a special meeting for us. It's been tough trying to get open. We've all been trying to open since March and have kind of faced some of the same challenges that have you guys working on a Zoom meeting today. So we definitely appreciate your time. To answer the question on the paint, yes, this is actually specifically made by Rust-Oleum to appear with plastic. But I wanted to make kind of two small corrections to the sign material itself and reinforce that even though it is a plastic material, it is a very dense, thick, heavy material. It's not a flimsy piece of plastic or something that is going to waver. If you didn't know that it was PVC, you would probably think it was a wood product. It's that heavy and dense, and it's about an inch thick.
Hey, Jennifer.
And it doesn't. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you state your full name and address for the record, please? I was muted. I was trying to say that earlier.
So sorry. Jennifer Parker, Vibes Nails and Lotion Bar, and the address is 325 East Main Street in Johnson City.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. You can go ahead.
No, you're fine. So this board is very dense and thick, about an inch thick, and again, a very heavy, sturdy material. And it does not slide into the bracket. It actually sits in the middle of the bracket and is bolted from both sides into the actual product itself.
Okay. Now, I guess, the physical durability of the material, I don't think that's really in question. It's really just the way it reacts with sunlight that it tends to yellow and crack, and that's just part of what PVC as a chemical does. So certain special protections will have to be in place because otherwise it will not hold up, and its performance it varies dramatically, depending on the product. For instance, we had problems with PVC roofs, I guess, probably before my lifetime and several people here. But, in the late 1970s to early 80s, they made PVC roofs, and over, not very long, the plasticizers leached out because of sunlight reaction and opened up giant gaps in the roof. So that's kind of an extreme example, but I think that illustrates best what could potentially occur. So, and if we're going to, be looking at it from a couple ways, that first you coat it with something that's meant to block the sunlight, an opaque coating such as the beige, and then go in with a clear coat on top of the entire assembly. I don't think that that's necessarily an issue, but it is something to be aware of in this case. And I think that, should something happen within the year before you would have to have a permanent piece in place anyway. If something happens, as long as that's addressed, if it does fade, I think that would cover it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The poly coating that's being used to cover the entire sign is actually a UV protectant.
Okay.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Jennifer, I want to know, what is a lotion bar?
So basically,
just to give you a chance to explain what your business is and tell folks a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so we're a nail salon. By our look, when you come in the building, you'll see we're not necessarily typical for this area. Very vibrant colors, very kind of upbeat. The lotion bar is actually a feature that we're adding in. It has been slowed slightly by COVID, but should be up and running within the first month of business. And it's basically where customers can come in and they can choose a scent that they like and customize it to the products that they like, whether it be like lotions, shampoos, conditioners, body sprays. They can create custom scents from those baseline fragrances.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions or comments for the applicant before we close the public hearing?
I don't have any emails.
Okay.
Come in.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you're good to go ahead.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ms. Parker. That we really appreciate you being here. If there's no other questions and comments, it sounds like what I'm hearing being proposed is a temporary permit for a PVC sign with an appropriate coating, a beige coating. And if I'm correct in that, and please correct me if I'm not.
That is not the request. The request is for this to be their signage.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Okay.
That's
Okay. Okay. So the request from the applicant is for this to be their permanent signage.
Yes. Projecting and then the window sign.
Okay.
Do we have to put a timeline in that motion, Matt?
That is not a motion. That's just a clarification of the request.
Okay.
A motion has not been made yet that I'm aware of, unless I missed something.
No.
So that's open for your discussion.
I'd be willing to go ahead and make a motion that we approve this with the understanding that we would reserve the right to come back and check it within a year and kind of see how it's holding up. And at that point, if it's deteriorating, recommend that they would have to replace it with other material.
We are 100% open to that idea.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I appreciate it, Jason.
Okay.
Jay, I appreciate your comments and clarification on deterioration, because PVC does deteriorate.
Right. And yeah, as long as it's protected, I don't, it shouldn't be a problem within, the 12 months we were discussing.
Right.
But it certainly could be. And I'm glad that it's all that, that had already been thought of. So I think that certainly helps. So I guess have we created a motion, or are we still formulating what that
is? There hasn't been a second. So that would need to happen. If that happens, then you would need to vote on that motion. but you can have further discussion on that, and it can be amended prior to any kind of vote.
Okay.
I will point out that, and I didn't make this very clear, the design guidelines specifically say that plastic is not an allowed material for signs.
Yeah.
So there is some precedent here. Part of my recommendation was taking into consideration the scale, the size of the sign being pretty small, 3 square feet. So that's a factor. But if you are going to consider, taking a look at it in a year, I think you might want to consider something a little more clear than that. So something that's from a staff perspective, we can go back to and say, here's what the motion was, here's what was approved. You can do this or you can't do that. Kind of just a little more clear cut than if it's deteriorating and how much deterioration. We don't need to be put in a position where we're trying to argue and it depends on your perspective. We need it to be very clear. So I would say a time limit, maybe just a hard time to say, all right, we're giving you X amount of time to get your business started using a material that's not approved, that's not allowed in our design guidelines, but we're going to let you use it up to this amount of time. And then you need to conform. I think that might be something that's a little, from a staff perspective, a little bit easier to enforce.
All right.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, Mike or Matt. That's the way I'd phrase that makes it very subjective.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to.
So can I just make a motion that we accept the design of the sign as is, with the understanding it's replaced by a conforming material by June 1st, 2021?
Yeah, Hal did make a motion, but Hal, do you want to
I'll rescind that motion.
Okay, so now Megan's made a motion, needs a second.
I'll second it.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Lawrence, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, if we could, I'm sorry, Chairman Brand, could we clarify the motion again, please?
And
yes.
And there could be further discussion as well.
Absolutely. Megan, why don't you restate your motion and then we can discuss it if needed.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept the signage design guidelines and materials for a period of 1 year, with the understanding that it's replaced with a conforming material and design by June 1st, 2021.
Thank you.
Nicole, just strike the word guideline from that motion, but otherwise it's right. I think it was just a misspeak.
That's fine. However it needs to be worded, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problem is not what the sign looks like. The problem is the material that it's being made out of.
Right. I just mean with the size of everything, like just making sure it's all good to go and all conforming next round. So however that needs to be specified.
Can you read it back, Nicole?
I have to approve as is, to be replaced by conforming material by June 1st of 2021.
Is that okay? Is that it? Is that correct?
That works for me. That's up for y'all. That's for y'all to.
And we can talk about it more.
Yeah.
If we go ahead and just trying to figure out the best way to take what Matt's saying and what the applicant needs, all that into consideration. So, but we definitely can speak about it more if there's more we want to discuss.
Yeah, I would just like to add the note to that to say that it also must be replaced if it shows signs of deterioration or discolor before so the maximum in the way that would work, the maximum if that material can be out there is until June 1st of next year, but it will have to also be replaced if staff sees that it is no longer holding up, based on coloration or physical degradation.
That's a great point, Jay. Thank you for the reminder of that. I'm sorry I didn't include that.
Can you, Megan, will you amend your motion to include that?
Yes, I amend the motion to include that stipulation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Lawrence, if you'll call the roll, please.
Commissioner Biasca,
Aye.
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
and Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion approved as stated.
Wonderful. All right. The next item of business is for 327 Main Street for flashback heat. Am I correct about that?
Yes, does not appear that the applicant is with us, but I'll skip some of my introduction. This is the same building, the same brackets, the same sign material, 1-inch thick PVC sign. The only difference here would be the design. Really, the applicant has proposed to paint it blue. I do not have clarification on if it will be painted white around the edge because it already is white. But based on what I'm hearing, it probably would be a good idea to make sure it's completely coated in white, and then the blue is painted, and then vinyl is being proposed for the yellow. This sign really, besides the material issue, which we spoke about at length, also has an issue with the extensive use of primary colors, which is discouraged in our design guidelines. I think the intent here obviously is to, because it's a vintage clothing store, is to kind of reference this a vintage era when people actually went to a physical retail outlet and checked out or rented movies from Blockbuster Movie. And so there's that that brand imagery of a bygone era is kind of reinforcing the theme of this store. That's what I take away from this. So to borrow that brand means to borrow, these very stark primary colors. And so that, I think that's common in our kind of large corporate retail chains. They're kind of simple primary colors are used in those brands. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here. And I think that's also what we're trying to not introduce into the downtown is that kind of corporate primary color branding. I think that's why we have that stipulation. But in this case, I think it also reflects this this idea of vintage, even though that makes me feel really old. So
you don't
I just
know.
want to point that out. It's up for you to discuss. And again, it's about scale. If this was a big giant sign, like a primary wall sign that we allow to go over the head, right over the top of the storefront, I think we're having a different discussion. This being a small 3 square foot projecting sign, that puts me, that makes a difference enough to me for me to recommend approval. Whereas I probably wouldn't for a larger sign. So I recommend approval for this sign, but I would like to add that stipulation that it be coated completely in some type of weather resistant paint. The 12-month stipulation should also, if it's going to be applied to the previous applicant, it should be applied here and to any other applicant that uses these sign blanks, which we'll be getting a third, hopefully we'll be getting a third tenant coming with the same proposal.
Yeah.
Are they in there yet?
They've been working on their spaces. They've been getting everything set up to get opened up, but they're kind of waiting on some of this process to get fully started.
Just to be clear, I did not see in the proposal, and you also did not mention, there is no proposal or plans to do any sort of window or door sign in addition to this. This is the only visible graphic intended.
Yeah, I'll say about this application, this was, I kind of heard that there was another tenant and that they were, fixing up their store and ready to open and all this stuff. And I said, well, they need to get their sign approved if they don't know that yet. And I think so I've been kind of pulling this applicant into this process to kind of help guide them through what's going to benefit them the most if they want to get open. And I want to make sure they didn't miss out on this meeting in case they were wanting to open soon. So there has not been extensive conversations with the applicant. We haven't sat down and gone through the design guidelines together. It's been more of really an effort to be as business friendly as possible and recognizing how necessary and borderline desperate folks are out there to start generating revenue. So wanted to make sure that they got on and could get open. We got Thomas here.
Yep. Hey.
And so we can open the public hearing in just a minute here, and we have the applicant who can speak to this application as well, and we can find out if he has other signage planned. But yes, typically we want to look at all the signage for a unit or a building at one time and see how it all works together. That's ideal. We know that the way these applications are coming in, the way that these sign designs are coming in, folks have, they're really thinking about how do they start this new business? What is their brand going to be? They've thought all about that way before they get to us. And so the design guidelines aren't necessarily employed before they start their design process for their brand. And so we're kind of looking back at the design guidelines saying, all right, how does this fit, or what can I modify to make it fit? And so it doesn't always work in an ideal fashion. And the same thing goes for master sign plan. People are, typically just trying to get something up that shows what their business is, and do it as inexpensively as possible and as quickly as possible.
Well, depending on how everyone feels, if they don't have any questions at this time, I'd love to hear from the applicant and go ahead and open the public hearing. And if Thomas, if you'll give us your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, the store address or just my personal address?
Personal address would be great.
Okay, Thomas Gillespie and 725 West Maple Street, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Thank you. Does anyone have any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
No.
I do. I'm not sure exactly how to ask this or if this is even in our purview, but Thomas, have you talked to or determined whether or not the sign is in any way a copyright violation?
I haven't talked to anybody about that. I just had it cut to on the end where it's not like the rigid type like the Blockbuster. But what I wanted to do was kind of cut that part out. I didn't get to crop it right. I was going to have the whole thing blue and just the letters yellow.
Okay.
All right.
So you would not have that little divot there that kind of makes it look like a ticket?
Yeah, right. It would just be solid blue and then just yellow lettering.
Thomas, I have a question. First of all, congratulations on your business. It's really exciting. Always great to see new businesses downtown. Do you have a backup color palette or color scheme just in case, because the design guidelines do say pretty explicitly no signage should really have these primary colors as their focal point. Do you kind of have a backup plan for the sign just in case?
No, I've used this logo for about a year and a half on my Instagram, so I never really had like a backup. But if I needed to, I'm sure I could come up with one pretty quick.
Okay, just wanted to check. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions at this time or comments for the applicant before we close the public hearing?
Thomas, just to be sure I understand, what you're saying is what you really want this is to be just a solid blue panel with the yellow lettering.
Yes, sir.
You would not have that white around it at all.
Nope. Solid blue and just yellow lettering.
Yellow lettering.
Okay.
Yeah, I meant to crop it exact. I just sent it in before I got to do that.
Okay. Now, did you, are you intending to include the yellow stripe?
I was thinking about it, but I'll just do the solid blue without the stripe too. I'll just do solid blue and the yellow lettering.
Okay. What I'm considering and proposing is that since you have a non-conforming material that will have to be replaced anyway, and you also have non-conforming colors, I'd like to propose that we also include a color palette adjustment for at the end of the 12-month period, as well as the material change.
I'll just add that with the changes that have kind of come up here on the fly, with the cropping and the removing of the yellow outline.
Yeah.
I think that does affect the, it may be safer from a legal standpoint if there's an issue with copyright. But I think it does shift it from being something that is suggestive of this bygone era of video rental stores, and it just turns it into a yellow and blue sign with block letters. So then I think there's a harder argument to be made for the use of those colors when our design guidelines clearly discourage the extensive use of primary colors. They're only to be used as an accent. That said, it can be very difficult. And again, scale is an issue. The extensive use of white or cream is discouraged, and the extensive use of primary colors. So it's pretty restrictive. And so I think, again, we need to keep in mind that there's discretion here, that commissioners can use that discretion, and that it's not set in stone like a code or a law. These are guidelines, so that discretion can be used, and we need to try to maintain our business-friendly efforts. So
I think we all want to be business friendly, and I definitely agree that we could potentially pass something with a limit, or that we could revisit it, etc. But my concern is that I'd like to see the final design before voting on it, because I kind of get a sense of what Thomas is saying with the adjustments, but I'm also worried about consistency, honestly, because we have had some business owners approach with different color schemes that have had primary colors and have been told no. And so it's a difficult climate. We want to get people launched, but if we go beyond a year with this color palette, I'm just worried that not only are we facing a fairness issue with people who have come to us with this, but we're also kind of setting a precedent. So I do want us to be mindful about doing everything we can to get Thomas launched, but also not setting ourselves up for inconsistencies in how we're deciding these things.
Yeah, I would have some reservations about that, just as a big blue panel with that bright yellow lettering on it. I think that's going to be even as small as it is, it's still going to be somewhat overpowering. And I'm a little reluctant to approve it at that point, just trying to visualize it. As Megan said, eliminate the white around it and take it back and even eliminate that yellow line around it. That changes to me the whole impact of it and what it does. And the fact that we are dealing with a material that's not approved really, and the issue of primary colors. I would like to see some other work on it too.
Okay.
Some other options for it.
Let me ask the question. So just to get it kind of a consensus is if it was what was shown, white outline, little dip to give the ticket stub feel, yellow outline, yellow letters, blue background, is that preferable, or is it just the use of primary colors in general?
Are we approving that color palette for just the year to be revisited, or this would be the permanent color of the signage?
That'd be up to you. But the main issue with the 1 year was that's been discussed so far and been approved was just related to material, and that that was due to the use of plastic.
Right.
Thomas, just one more. I want to just kind of restate a question I asked because maybe you could provide some input here. The proposal that we have before us is simply for this one sign and not including any graphics on the door or on the main window facing Main Street. Is that accurate, or do you have plans in the future to include that?
I had plans in the future to include like a small version of my logo on my door, not big at all, just pretty small, but not too big.
Okay.
About, I'd say less than a foot. It'd probably be about 8 inches, I'd say, maybe.
Okay. I just want to clarify for you that would have to be approved by us under a separate proposal.
Okay.
Because it's not included in this today.
Yeah. Yeah, I planned on doing that in the future. Just not right now.
Okay. So I guess for me, what that clarifies is that if we said, okay, we'll let you use your blue and yellow colors for the 12 months, and then you come and you then want to add additional graphics to the window.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying now.
Does that create a complication that then you have mismatched graphics, or we have to, what do we do with the colors at that point?
Right.
He'd potentially have to replace the window signage as well as the projection sign to get them to match.
Right. And honestly, I don't want to allow us to lead you down a road, and then it's just simply going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
Right? So I'd like to at least point you in the right direction, so that way we can at least agree on the plan, and that way when you come in with your future graphics, it dovetails into what we've already approved, ideally.
Right. Gotcha.
I didn't get much feedback on my last question. Just curious if there was any more thoughts on if it looked just like what was presented versus this crop down blue and yellow. Does that have an impact on how anyone's viewing this?
Well, it does to me, because I think the white cuts the impact of it just a little bit. And I think if you just do the blue and yellow up there, and that's all you're going to see, especially since it's just a simple block letter.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't find that very compatible with the district, I guess.
What if I included just a little bit more white? It's not as cropped. It's still the ticket stub. It's just maybe a little bit more white. Would that help any?
Yeah, it might.
How about white to where the stripe goes, and then get rid of the stripe?
Okay.
Do that.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
I think what I'm hearing is that folks like the design that's shown with some white with a ticket stub look, as long as it's legally okay. And that's not really our purview. So I don't think we need to really worry about whether you have approval from Blockbuster or not. That's outside of the responsibilities of this commission. But yeah, this discussion can continue, but I think where we kind of got off was, or off track was, with the idea that we're gonna crop it down, remove the ticket stub imagery, and just have blue and yellow. And now it sounds like we're maybe moving away from that back towards the way it's presented on the screen now. I don't, starting to say, oh, we're going to shave off a little more blue and add more white. It either needs to be what's presented, or we need to see another rendering and come back later. So that may be, if the applicant is okay with what's presented, which going back a few minutes ago, you said, oh no, I'm going to crop it down and do, take out the yellow stripe.
Yeah, I figured that would be easier to be approved by you guys. Maybe, I mean, what I submitted, I mean, that was my original plan, so I'm definitely fine with that.
Okay, so let's discuss that and vote on that, and then if there's issues, we can discuss alternatives moving forward.
My concern that I don't know if we've totally resolved is whether or not to allow signage that is so explicitly against the guidelines being the two primary colors. So I think the ticket stub design helps. Obviously we want to support Thomas in any way we can, but it's page 39, it's black and white, and I'm really concerned both about consistency of aesthetics and also the precedent that it sets for other business owners, because we have enforced this in the past. We plan to enforce in the future. So, if we're going to make an exception, I hope that it's on very thoughtful grounds and very purposeful grounds, and not just, because hopefully Thomas will be in business there for a very, very long time. So, if that's going to be a fixture in our downtown, I want to make sure that we're on the same page about approving that color palette.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment, Megan. I think that, we don't want to create problems. And I think that the problem that I have, or the concern that I have with this particular design, is that it's kind of a catch-22, that as with the ticket stub aesthetic, it's reminiscent of a corporate imagery, which is also not in the guideline explicitly, and the color palette is not in the guideline. So if you remove the one without dealing with the other, have we really accomplished anything in terms of compliance? And I have to say no, that we have not done that. So I'm not sure if we can get there with this design, but it might just be that we need to see those alternates.
One thing I'll add is with the HDU, the high density urethane products, the colors you can add a wood grain, and you get a much softer, and I don't know, I'm sure no one can see this. That is an image. Oh yeah, a high density urethane sign. You can see the texture there, and the colors can be a little more, they're just softer, a little more muted. And so if there's a time period on the material, then I think this same design would have a totally different feel, and would be much more of a higher quality, have a higher quality visual impact in the district, just changing the materials and having engraved lettering, wood grain. I think all that really changes the way that the impact of this sign versus blue, yellow, plastic.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that if we're trying to come away from the corporate we lost the notch of the ticket stub but kept the yellow outline, I think, you know, that might help with the impact of the sign, that it doesn't just look like yellow letters on a blue field. But I'm inclined to agree with that.
Well, the other thing that I'm looking at here on our section on colors, the first line is that use colors in the sign that are compatible with the building front. No. How does it, I don't know, how do you describe that? And then it limits the other things that are in there. But I would like to see some other versions of this and some other proposals, I think, before we move forward on it.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of great thoughts and feedback, and it seems like we're coming towards an understanding and coming towards a vote. Does anyone have any more questions for the applicant? All right, sounds like no. I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Matt, you haven't gotten any other public hearing emails or anything, correct?
No, no other comments.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Thomas.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, we've had a lot of great discussion. Does anyone want to make a motion around this? The motion could also be to, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but we could table this or defer this as well as voting yes or no. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I don't know if Nicole might want to weigh in on procedure for that.
You're welcome to defer it until the next meeting. If you table it, that means we will just revisit it before adjournment. So
right.
It's up to you, whichever. I think this is our last item, is it?
Yeah. So yeah, we would defer it. I mean, if we tabled it, we would just start talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to defer, I believe, are we going to have a regular meeting virtually, Matt, at the end of this month?
It hasn't been decided yet, but there seems to be some support for it. But it somewhat depends on if we get other applications, which we don't have right now. This wraps up all the necessary business. But if this needs to be revisited, this particular item, then yeah, we have a regular scheduled meeting set for 20 days from now.
Right.
So just under 3 weeks. So
yes. So you can defer it until the next regular meeting of the Historic Commission.
I would move for deferral until our next meeting.
Second.
Wonderful. And Hal, would your motion include not only deferral, but also you'd like to see other proposed schemes for this? Is that okay?
Yeah, I would like to see either some more of this one as exactly it wants it, or even some other options of maybe.
So what you can do is
it
can be a motion to defer until the next meeting, and then a direction or a directive to staff to work with the applicant on some alternatives.
Okay, that sounds good.
I think he would really benefit from collaborating with you and the staff on this, Matt. I think it would really help him to clarify his vision. And then that way, whatever he comes with, we'll know exactly what he wants to do, and it'll be an informed design on his part as much as possible. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree. This is not atypical of rushed, hurried applications where we're trying to meet a really short turnaround and deadline. So this was an attempt, but we can do better for sure.
Love it. Wonderful. All right. So it sounds like we have a motion from Commissioner Hunter and a second from
I said second.
From Liz.
From Commissioner Biasca.
Biasca.
Wonderful. Ms. Lawrence, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Biasca,
Yes.
Commissioner Forsyth,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner McCusker,
Yes.
Commissioner Toole,
Yes.
Chairman Brand.
Yes.
Motion to defer approved.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
One other thing, just want to let everybody know that 416 and 423 West Maple were demolished, and they are empty lots now. I went by 416 right beforehand and went through it, and God, just it makes my heart hurt knowing what all was still in there. That is in the landfill now. We were unable to do the salvage. The property owner fell off the face of the earth, had some health issues, and we could not get in touch with them and could not get the salvage agreement in place. And at some point it became, it just seemed to cross that line from we're just kind of waiting around trying to get in touch with this property owner for weeks and weeks and weeks. And you had the residents who were dealing with this just rotting house that's sitting there, just getting worse and worse by the day. So we finally just decided to cut it and let them go ahead and take it down. But there was, clawfoot tubs and the old decorative radiator heaters and beautiful woodwork and tile and all this stuff that it was tough to see it go. But hopefully those lots have a bright future in the historic district. But wanted y'all to know that. But that's the only other update that I felt was really timely. Everything else can wait until our next meeting. But if anybody wants to have any other discussion about things that we've been doing or need to do, I'm open to that. Otherwise, we can adjourn.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that stuff in the next meeting. I think, I'm sitting here in my empty restaurant. We're all adjusting to a new normal. So I would love to make it the expectation that we're going to continue these meetings virtually and try to sally forth in this climate. And I would love for all of y'all to be thinking about what that looks like and what you'd be interested in trying to make happen remotely as we just deal with this. I do see here a note, Matt, about the 1888 building. I just drove by a few hours ago and they're working on it.
Good. Yeah, that time's out. That's a little bit longer than what we thought, but were they working on the windows?
Yeah, they were working on the facade. Like they're doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, the windows are right. The windows.
Windows on the front of them.
Yeah, it looks
great.
Yeah.
So great. I think we'll see a lot of construction and things during this time, and I think we need to stay vigilant and keep doing what we're asked to do.
All right.
Absolutely.
Matt, one thing, I don't know where we are on this. I know we had the issues, what the heck's the street number, 600, the Leslie Litvak house. Do you remember that one with the construction of the carport and all?
How could I forget?
Figure out what to do with his columns.
Yes.
And he passed away last week.
Did he? I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he did. Of course, we know he was in very bad health, but so just to let you know, I mean, I have no idea what's going to go on with that, but
we'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, I have no idea what may happen with that either, but we can keep on.
This is the 727 West Maple Street. You're talking about the gentleman passed away?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's not the address.
No,
that's
727 is the big one on up the street. The
new
built the standard.
Yeah.
No, he was in the 600 block.
600. Yeah, like early
3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I just saw him the other day in the neighborhood.
Anyway, okay.
Well, thanks everybody for.
Way to leave us on a high note, Hal.
Yeah. So hey, the high note is that
Here's your high note.
Gwen and I are playing. Yeah, we're playing grandparent a lot right now.
Well, I look forward to seeing everybody in person. My computer is about to die, so I'm going to sign off. I'll see everybody soon. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.